This is the first of a series of videos looking at Australian-made tape recorders of the Byer Roller Plessy line. It started in 1955 when Byer released the 77, now known as the 77mk1. The design philosophy carried through to the mid-1980s when the last machines were made. One of the features was they could either be rack-mounted or used as a standalone unit, with the back folding out to allow the machine to be at an angle to allow good ergonomic use. Also, having the back open allowed the heat to escape from the three massive motors, as well as the valve amplifier underneath. This is a typical setup with two machines in a rack to allow for convenient dubbing, recording and playback. Byer had a reputation for sound quality. They originally began as broadcast recording services during the 1940s, originally making blank acetate recording discs. They moved on to other recording equipment for the broadcast and other industries. Everything was made at their factory in Richmond, in the inner suburbs of Melbourne. One of their famous products was the Byer 16-inch transcription turntable. It was used by just about every radio station in Australia at the time. In the early 1950s, Byer started importing and then manufacturing the American Magnachord. These tape recorders were simple, with few features, but did offer good record and playback quality at an affordable price, and were very popular with the thousands of small radio stations across the United States. Although the Byer brand is certainly well known, it didn't really last that long. After producing the 77mk1 and Mark II and the popular Byer 66 tape recorder that we'll look at in the next video, the company was sold to Roller Australia in 1957, although Roller kept using the Byer name for some time afterwards. Max Byer moved to Holbrook, halfway between Melbourne and Sydney on the Hume Highway, and built a motel. And to this day, the Byer logo is still on that motel. Although many times removed from the original owner and builder, the Byer motel, if you go in the foyer, still has a Byer tape recorder. That's our little bit of history. Now let's look at the machine itself. The input takes 600 ohms or high impedance for bridge input, using the then standard balanced carrier jacks. Both the high impedance and the 600 ohm input go via pads to the mic preamp valve. This would add some noise, you would think. The output section has 600 ohms balanced and 2 ohms for a loudspeaker. The phone's connection goes straight to the output of the tape head replay amplifier, so you can monitor the quality of the recording while it's happening. The amplifier is separately switched from play to record, or a straight-through amplifier with VU monitoring. One feature is that the VU meter can be used as a multimeter to check the function of the valves in the various stages. The main gain control is used on both record, replay and straight-through functions. The monitor speaker control is just a rheostat. There's a 2 ohm output on the 600 ohm output transformer. There's only about 100 milliwatts available for the speaker or 2 ohm output. In the centre there's a speed change switch and the stop, start and spooling buttons. They were not the easiest machines to thread, and as you'll see later, they were mainly used with the head covers removed. The relay switching system works very well, and the spooling is extra fast. The brakes on this machine are completely worn out, but normally you wouldn't get this sort of run on. There should be a cover over the relays to protect you from the high voltages. But at least we can see the relays doing their thing. This is the oldest tape I've got. It's from 1960 and would have been recorded on one of these same machines. A news broadcast from 5CL Adelaide.
The time is 20 minutes to 11, and here is the news from South Australia, read by Godfrey Stanton Hicks. The Australian Public Service Federation will seek equal pay for women public servants in all Australian states. At the Federation's biennial conference in Sydney today, delegates voted unanimously in favour of an approach to the federal government. The Federation also will seek the elimination of differences in the salaries of men and women. It will ask for adjustments as soon as possible on a progressive scale if necessary. A Sydney service station proprietor has won a test case on the sale of petrol from a coin-operated vending machine at night. The full bench of the New South Wales Industrial Commission today upheld an appeal by T.P. Duffy Proprietary Limited of Victoria Road, Gladesville, against the conviction of having sold petrol from a self-service pump after 8:30 at night, the prescribed closing hour. The service station had been sued and fined under sections of the Factories and Shops Act. The Industrial Commission found, however, that the vending machine was not a shop and was not regulated by the legal operating and closing times for service stations. Two judges also ruled that there were lack of legal proof of the supply of petrol at the stated time. The Central Australian drought is reported to have caused hardship amongst the Aborigines at St. Teresa Roman Catholic Mission near Alice Springs. A spokesman for the mission, the Reverend Father Summerhays, said today that because of the drought, many Aborigines had lost their jobs at cattle stations. A number of them were now relying on rations. The Anglican Archbishop of Brisbane, Archbishop Hals, has been in office for 18 years today. The Archbishop Hals is 80. When an ABC television team called on him today, he chatted about old times and showed some scores of photographs around his study walls. One was a photograph taken in 1923, where Archbishop Hals, then the head of the Bush Brotherhood, travelled with 3 companions in an old car from the Gulf of Carpentaria to Melbourne. Young soccer players at Adelaide's Challa Gardens Primary School today received a trophy for winning an inter-school competition. It was presented to the team captain, Jim Lapino, aged 12. For listeners who may have just tuned in, we repeat the news that Princess Margaret has given birth to a baby boy. An official announcement from London said both mother and baby were well. That ends the news from the ABC. The next news will be heard from 5CL and regionals at 6:15 tomorrow morning.
Well, I don't know how long Godfrey Stanton Hicks lasted as a newsreader. He seems to make quite a few mistakes. Anyway, let's have a look at the machine with the head covers taken off, and we can see how much easier it is to thread. The tape system on these machines is quite problematic. In most professional machines, the tape is naturally in contact with the heads and gets pushed off during spooling. The opposite happens here. It makes it very hard to clean the heads, almost impossible to do any tape cut editing, and gets out of adjustment very easily. But then again, I guess they weren't meant to be used 60 years after they were manufactured.
In our program of dance music tonight, we begin with Designs for Dancing. We hear The Swinging Genie and Breezin' Along with the Breeze from Les Elgar and his orchestra.